Hannah Gruen clued Nancy into a circus mystery. Nancy has to locate the father of an adopted trapeze artist named Natalia Petronov. If this story sounds familiar, that's because it's based on Nancy Drew number 31, The Ringmaster's Secret. I don't know why they picked that particular book to rewrite. I'm not saying it's a bad choice, it's just not the one I would have picked. Feel free to leave a comment letting me know what Nancy Drew book you would have liked to have seen rewritten in the style of this series.
Argofunk Book Review, Argofunk Book Review.
The circus owner is Marshall Kaiser. The other trapeze artists are Natalia's boyfriend, Hayden Gentry, and her rival, Katrina von Swalla. There are also two motorcycle performers called the Pomados. They're on the official suspect list, but they are so nice and removed from the main story, I never suspected them. Nancy arrives just as today's culprit decides to kill Natalia. The first chapter ends with the cover scene, where Natalia slips off a bar and falls into a safety net. Katrina is rude about it, suggesting Natalia fell because she likes attention. Nancy sees that it wasn't an accident. Someone deliberately oiled the bar. When Nancy asks Katrina about the oil, Katrina storms at her. A clown steps in to defuse the fight. He explains Katrina's mad because she used to date Hayden. It's pretty awkward that he performs with his girlfriend and ex-girlfriend at the same time. Marshall is quick to take Katrina's side, and he insists Natalia fell because she's incompetent. Nancy suspects Marshall's plotting to kill Natalia for the insurance money. Nancy switches gears for a bit and looks into the mystery that she was actually asked to solve. Natalia's birth mother was a famous Russian ballerina named Irina. She was on tour in America when she became pregnant. Natalia's adoptive mother, Vera, is the circus's wardrobe mistress. Vera refuses to say anything, insisting she knows what's best, so Nancy should butt out. Vera says the adoption papers were lost in a fire. Gee, how convenient for the cover-up she's doing. Nancy asks too many questions, and Vera charges her with scissors. Nancy tells her to stop, and she does. I wish all Nancy Drew culprits were that easy to stop. The circus has their annual Hit the Road party, where Hayden and Natalia announce their engagement. The clowns goof off, and Nancy almost collides with a well-dressed man. He is Richard Smith. He provided the circus with transportation vehicles 2 months ago. I have no idea why the circus invited their car salesman to their big party, but whatever. Marshall arrives by motorcycle and gets mad when Nancy asks questions. Katrina reveals that Natalia is leaving them for a larger circus. She saw the acceptance letter when she was stealing things from Natalia's closed bag. Wow, rude. Nancy uses her detective contacts to get dozens of newspaper articles from 18 years ago, when Natalia's mother was on tour. She gets Vera's immigration files, which show Vera's lying about her last name. Nancy has a lab analysis done on the trapeze bar to show it was sabotaged with petroleum jelly. I'm pretty impressed with Nancy's detective contacts in this book. Too bad she doesn't have a dedicated research team in every book. The culprit tries to run Natalia over with a motorcycle. Nancy saves Natalia in time. The motorcycle performers say the culprit stole their motorcycle. The police eventually find it because they can occasionally solve mysteries without Nancy's help. Nancy decides it's time for breaking and entering. She breaks into Marshall's office and learns Vera's last name. She breaks into Katrina's trailer and finds evidence Katrina is the one who sabotaged the bar. Nancy's caught by Katrina's guard dog. Nancy presses hard against Katrina before Katrina admits she did sabotage the bar. The culprit leaves a threatening message for Nancy, written on Marshall's typewriter. The newspapers show Natalia's mother had the same chauffeur for her entire tour. The license plate and limousine records identify him as Viktor Bykov. 1 page later, Nancy learns Natalia's birth name is Natalia Bykov, meaning Victor is Natalia's father. Nancy still has some questions, though, so she decides not to tell Natalia the good news yet. Kind of rude of her. Richard returns for Natalia and Hayden's engagement party, because of course they invited the guy who rented their boss some trucks 2 months ago. Richard somehow knows about the stolen motorcycles without being told, and he is persistent in asking Nancy to collect seashells with him. The clowns do a traditional prank with socks and white powder, only the culprit switches the powder with something else. This causes Natalia to have an asthma attack so bad she needs to go to the hospital. The culprit strikes again. They call the hospital and cancel the ambulance for Natalia. The culprit also captures Nancy, ties her up, and throws her inside the tiger cage. Arguably, this murdering culprit puts more effort into killing Nancy than killing Natalia. Nancy escapes by making enough noise to get the attention of an animal attendant, while still being quiet enough to avoid disturbing the animals. Nancy finds the stem of the culprit's watch on her sweater. She finds another threatening message for her on Marshall's desk. Marshall claims he's being set up, and he is now scared enough to cooperate with the investigation. Nancy solves the mystery at this point. I think the mystery solution is a little too easy. Nancy sees Natalia and Vera together. She thinks they look so similar, they must be aunt and niece. And she's right, that's the surprise solution. Remember, Vera is Natalia's adoptive mother. Literally hundreds of people have seen them together. But nobody before Nancy Drew figured out they look so much alike they must be related. Vera confesses she is Natalia's aunt. Years ago, she tried giving baby Natalia to Victor Bykov at a circus performance, but he never showed up. She figured that meant he was too busy with his new family, which includes a young boy named Dickie Smith. Nancy suspects Dickie Smith grew up into Richard Smith, and he's the culprit. She needs proof, though. She goes to the card company to see if Victor works there. In a move I don't understand, Nancy asks the secretary if Richard's there. Nancy, you're here to find Victor. Why are you asking for someone else? Richard is there. He shows off his watch to prove he's innocent. All it does is prove he's guilty. The tan lines on the watch don't match, meaning he swapped it out recently. Nancy agrees to go seashell hunting with Victor. She pushes him into confessing and taunts him for being so childish and petty. He breaks the flashlight that Nancy planned to use to signal her friends. Nancy uses a whistle instead. She thinks the whistle is broken at first, but it turns out to be a dog whistle. Katrina's dog saves Nancy. Good boy, Hugo. It's explained that Victor did come to the circus to get his daughter all those years ago. 12-year-old Richard was jealous, so he interfered. He started his recent plot to kill Natalia when he sold the trucks to the circus and saw Vera by chance. He instantly recognized her and decided it's time to kill Natalia. Yes, Richard instantly recognized a woman he saw once, 18 years ago. I don't know if that's more or less believable than Nancy Drew being the first person to realize Vera and Natalia are related. The end. Post-book follow-up. I thought this was a good book. It felt fairly different for this series. Maybe that's because it's based on one of the original Nancy Drew books. Nancy certainly doesn't have a dedicated phone and newspaper research crew elsewhere in this series. I thought it was a little too obvious that Richard's the culprit. I said the Pomatos are too removed from the story to be the culprits. That goes double for Richard. I could tell there was no reason for him to be so involved with events unless he was the surprise culprit. Also, he's not on the official suspect list. I wish I'd kept track of how many times the culprit is the character who's not on the suspect list, because I'm sure it's been at least 10 books at this point. I'm told the original book has a different culprit, so people who read that book first were definitely fooled. I have to say, it's weird to hear Nancy and her friends talk about the Cold War as something that's been over for years. At the start of this series, Nancy was super into Cold War stuff, and she fought communist villains. Overall, I would recommend this book if you want something different from the series, something more like the original Nancy Drew books. I mostly liked it, but not the last 30 pages, where the mystery solution hinges upon Nancy looking at Vera's face, and the culprit remembers Vera's face from 18 years ago. How distinctive is Vera's face? I give Nancy Drew Files number 82, Dangerous Relations, a 6 out of 10.